It's Professor Sky, and I'm going back. I'm going to be continuing my series on creating a hip hop class. This is, I think, my fourth video in the series where I'm creating a class on hip hop studies and rap music at the college where I teach, although I do not represent the college on this channel. But I'm just trying to take you behind the curtain, sort of how a professor thinks, how I think. My goal is to create the best class on hip hop ever taught. And how am I going to do that? I don't think I will. It's very unlikely that it will be the best class on hip hop ever taught the first time, but who knows? Maybe the third or fourth time. There's some pretty good competition there. But I have a blind spot, and there's no point in trying to tiptoe around it. My knowledge of women in hip hop is very, very low. I, like many hip hop enjoyers and consumers, uncritically consumed misogynist rap music. Well, I was maybe a little bit cognizant. No, I mean, I knew all the usage of the B word and all that. I knew that rap was misogynist. I knew that. But what I didn't really understand was how I had internalized that misogyny, or how I turned it into something that I didn't see. So there's the part that I saw where, I heard whatever, Snoop Dogg or whatever, talking about the H's and the B's and all that. But my sort of resistance to ever listen to female rappers or take them seriously, that was what I did not recognize. I mean, I remember always making fun of female rappers. And I didn't know that I was doing it because I was rejecting their place in a male-dominated field. I was a teenager. So when my friend said, "This is Sister Soldier, hit me with a hammer," because we thought Sister Soldier was annoying, that's why. Looking back at it, Sister Soldier was great. "You can't play with my yo-yo." We used to make fun of that all the time. Queen Latifah, we just completely ignored, totally made fun of. MC Lyte, never listened to. Lady of Rage, laughed about her Afro puffs. Just down the line, whenever there was a rapper who showed up who was female, we just dismissed them. I never took TLC seriously. I never took Salt and Pepper seriously. It was only when Missy Elliott arrived and then Lauryn Hill arrived that I started to say, well, maybe there are female rappers worth listening to. Now, if you watch my channel, I've corrected this. No, I haven't corrected it. That's arrogant, obnoxious. That is downplaying how deeply ingrained that misogyny was within me. I've been working to overcome this. I feature female rappers. I've done video essays on Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B and Shay Noir and a whole bunch of female rappers. And I'm trying, but I'm still stuck. Even when I'm looking at the syllabus that I created for this class, I currently have it as a week. So 3 classes, 3 50-minute classes dedicated to female rappers. Now, already I'm sitting here and I'm like, should I really be separating them from the major movements? Or should I be integrating them into the major movements? The problem is, I don't think realistically integrating them into the major movements in most cases is an authentic depiction of how hip-hop culture moved, partly because of sexism, partly because of misogyny, structural, personal, otherwise. In general, most of the movements and changes in rap music have not been made by the female artists, with several important exceptions, such as Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott. I would argue Nicki Minaj as well. I'd probably argue Cardi B as well, and probably Megan Thee Stallion as well. Okay, there's a lot of exceptions, and probably Salt and Pepper. But the point is, if you're trying to explain the history and breadth of rap music, women were marginalized, and therefore their input is marginal. Is the thought. Is the thing that I'm saying. And as the words come out of my mouth, I realize you may be typing up some comments saying, "Sky, you're doing the thing you said you weren't doing." Obviously, 50% of the world is not contributing marginally to hip hop. But I would say their influence on hip hop was also marginalized. There, I saved it. It's not that their influence was marginal, it's that their influence was marginalized. Going back to the very beginning, where we talk about DJ Kool Herc, starting hip hop, but he started it with his sister. Okay, she was there. The founding of hip hop was a man and a woman, a brother and a sister. But what do we talk about? So it's not that their contributions are marginal, it's that their contributions were marginalized. So as I'm trying to put this all together, I'm struggling, because I have 15 weeks, 3 classes a week, a couple classes, it'll be probably exams. So, I've got around 45 classes. I've got to cover the entire history of rap music and hip hop culture. So I got to have a couple classes about dance, a couple classes about graffiti. That's got to be in there as well. And already I'm thinking about the old school and the new school and the current school and the underground and all the different things, gangster rap, all these things. So how do I meaningfully integrate female rap artists without marginalizing them, and also without doing the sort of patronizing thing of pretending like their contributions were not marginalized? If I treat Foxy Brown with the same level of seriousness as Jay-Z, I'm sort of glossing over the nature of history, where her contributions were marginalized and his were not. Because the thing is, what we hope is that the contributions will no longer be marginalized, that there will be parity, that there will be equality. I mean, just as an example, I got this book. It's a pretty fun book. I'm going to be using this. I'm going to go through it some other time. The Rap Yearbook. It's kind of a fun read. The text is too small for an old man like me, but beyond that, it's good. 1 rap song per year. How many songs feature a woman? 1. Monster. 1 verse out of whatever 40 years of rap music. So what I want to do now is I want to really talk about this book, which is the book that I'm going to be using, which I think is a very good book. I'm going to give you my sort of my book review, while also going over how I plan to approach what female artists am I going to be featuring, how am I going to be featuring them. First of all, the cover here is great. A crown as brass knuckles. That shows a lot of strength. This is Kathy Iandoli. This is the author of this book. And what's interesting is she's sort of expanding on the section in Black Noise by Trisha Rose. Trisha Rose, who teaches at Brown. I think she's probably going to have the crown for the best hip hop class. I wish I could pretend to be an undergrad and go take her class, because she is such a great scholar. So she has an entire chapter in here on Black women rappers. And so how am I going to do this? Well, I'm making them buy this book. So I'm going to make them read this chapter. But in particular, I want to focus on the first and the last things that Trisha Rose says. Black women rappers interpret and articulate the fears, pleasures, and promises of young Black women whose voices have been relegated to the margins of public discourse. By paying close attention to female rappers, we can gain some insight into how young African-American women provide for themselves in a relatively safe, free play zone, where they creatively address questions of sexual power, the reality of truncated economic opportunities, and the pain of racism and sexism. She's such a great writer. And then I'm going to have them contemplate the final paragraph of this section. Black women rappers have effectively changed the interpretive framework for the work of male rappers and have contested the public sphere discourses, particularly those pertaining to race and gender. As women who challenge sexism expressed by male rappers, yet sustain dialogue with them, who reject the racially coded aesthetic hierarchies of American popular culture by privileging Black female bodies, and who support Black women's voices and history, Black female rappers constitute an important and resistive voice in rap and contemporary Black women's cultural production in general. So there's the sort of larger viewpoint, which I think is very useful. She has a lot of good information in here, little paragraphs, but really it's all built up in this book. So what makes this book so great? It is exhaustive. It is an exhaustive analysis of all the women in rap music up until 2020, maybe. It goes up through Megan Thee Stallion, so pretty new for now. And there are some people I hadn't heard of. There are some artists whose contributions I did not fully understand. I mean, I didn't understand the importance of MC Light. I didn't really understand all the barriers that she broke through, the importance, because again, as a young man, I completely ignored MC Light and just assumed that she was fake. That was my sexism. Okay. That was my sexism, which I didn't think I had. I thought I was that's just what I thought. So what I'm going to do is what I've been doing in general, where, I'm not going to have my students buy this book, but I'm going to scan some pages and share those pages with my students. And we are going with there. Good. So I am now screen sharing. God save the Queen. So these are the things I hand to the assistants, the administrative assistants who work at my school, and I have them scan these things. I'm going to eventually be putting them together into some kind of reader. People have asked me if I will share the reader online. No, I won't. It's a copyright question. You should buy this book. This is a very good, interesting read. The weaknesses of the book, sometimes the tone is a little bit too light. Like sometimes I wish the tone were a little bit more serious. Maybe I just like the style of writing of Trisha Rose, where it's a little bit more serious. At times, like there's a little bit of slang. Sometimes it moves a little quickly when I wish it would slow down, and it slows down a little bit when I wish it would go more quickly, but doesn't really matter. So Roxanne Shante is where I would start it. Now, she starts off quite interestingly talking about the early days of women in hip hop, in particular Debbie D. I'm probably going to use this information. I'm going to talk about Debbie D when I talk about the old days of hip hop, sort of before any recordings came out. But I don't think I'm going to have the students learn about her because I don't think it's a time question. But I'm going to talk about Roxanne Shante. And she does a good job of breaking down the rise of Roxanne Shante and how she got onto the song Roxanne's Revenge, like how she just basically pushed her way into this dialogue. And what's interesting is, and one thing I'm going to do, so a couple things this book does super well. One of them is really, it's almost like a book of beefs, and it contextualizes and shows that the beefs are because women are encouraged to fight with each other. And at the end, when we see that Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion, and maybe even eventually Nicki Minaj, are not based on beefing with other women. Nicki Minaj maybe is a little bit more, but that's a lot of what's been holding women back, is that when they are given space in rap music, they are then encouraged to immediately turn that on other rap artists who are female. So I'm excited to bring up Roxanne Shante and say she starts off attacking men, attacking the sexist trope that they're employing. But then immediately UTFO gets a female rapper to come on and start attacking her. And there's I think, according to here, there's over 80 tracks attacking Roxanne Shante. And that's so clearly just a sign of the nature of the sexism and patriarchal control that the second a female rapper has any success at all, it's immediately used to start attacking other women. To that point as well, she has a good description of the battle between Antoinette and MC Light. That's what's right there. I'm going to be featuring that a little bit too. I haven't decided. I might spend more time with MC Light, but I think I want to get to Queen Latifah, because Queen Latifah is so present in modern day society. And also because I'm going to eventually be touching on some questions of, queer and gay MCs. I think she might be an interesting person there. Definitely, I want to have the Antoinette and Light, because the line "hot damn ho, here we go again" comes from that beef, and that's just a line which my students might know. So for Queen Latifah, I'm really going to feature the song "Ladies First." It's just one of those super important songs, and it does that thing of just being a full-on explanation of what was the term that she used? A womanifesto. I think that's the term that she uses. How it's this friendship between Moni Love and Queen Latifah. how they are able to express themselves. Also on here, there's a little section here about Salt and Pepper and the song Let's Talk About Sex. This is a thing I really like about this book, is how it tracks the history of talking about sex from female rappers. And it doesn't do it super explicitly. Maybe that's one of the strengths and weaknesses of this book, is it's not thematically divided. So because of that, now that I'm thinking about it, I can pick up on how it starts introducing how is sex talked about, and Salt and Pepper, Let's Talk About Sex. I'm excited to bring that up in my class because that was such an important song, just because it was female artists saying the word sex, just that itself. And then, of course, the fact that it was getting towards a more frank discussion of sex, which we'd obviously get into. Also, after that, we have TLC and Salt and Pepper, and that's where I'm going to be confronting my own biases and talking about the thing that female rappers can do that male rappers in general don't do. I guess they can sometimes, especially ever since Kanye introduced the idea that you don't have to sing to be able to sing. No shade. I love 808s and Heartbreak. But like, it's important that they have that range to rap and to sing. And my sexist tendency, was to immediately dismiss anybody who was singing as not being a rapper. So she writes about that quite well here. Now, there's a lot of other female rappers who she talks about, Da Brat and the whole series of female rappers. I mean, really, it's like basically everyone's in here. So what I decided to do, because I can't get to all of them, because obviously I'm not going to get to every male rapper either, I'm going to really focus on Lady of Rage, just because I really like Lady of Rage, but also because the song is called Afro Puffs, and that touches on the question of black hair. And I think that might be able to start an interesting conversation, which will either help my students who are black feel seen, or my students who are not black better understand a question of sexism, patriarchy, beauty standards, these things that they might not know about. So in addition to being just a super badass rap song by a woman, it's more than that. My favorite thing about this book is the way that it consistently goes to Rah Digga, who was a part of the Flip Mode Squad, who really hammers home this concept that there's two archetypes, the Nubian princess and the sex kittens. So I'm going to have my students fill this out. And if one of my students is watching this, hey, that's going to be on the exam. Okay. I guarantee you, I'm going to ask you to try to figure out the difference, because Rah Digga essentially points out that women are sort of allowed two lanes, but they're not allowed to exist in both lanes at once. So it's a real problem that's happening. And that's really what the whole history of women in hip hop can be seen as: marginalized voices being marginalized while being allowed to be one of two things. The section on Lil' Kim and Foxy Brown is quite interesting and well done. I'm sort of doing that to set up that this sort of the 90s set up what we're doing now in the 2020s. So the presence of sex positive, raunchy female rappers in the 90s established a place where eventually that would be done in a more actually empowering way in the 2020s. So I really like the section on Lil' Kim and Foxy. I like the section on Missy Elliott. I would have liked more, but that's just maybe a personal thing. Because, I mean, truly, Missy Elliott changed the way that I conceive of music, the way I conceive of hip hop. Because she was neither sex kitten nor Nubian princess, right? Like, she didn't come out trying to be sexy, nor did she come out trying to say, I am woman, hear me roar. She just came out as like this just amazing artist. Because of that, she managed to be both empowering and sexy. She managed to be all those things all at once, while at the same time being a songwriter, being extremely creative, shifting the zeitgeist along with Timbaland, shifting the sounds of music. So I'm going to be presenting Missy Elliott and Lauryn Hill sort of together. So the idea is that Lil' Kim and Foxy and Missy Elliott and Lauryn Hill sort of show what was happening in the 90s and the 2000s, in the early 2000s, of these artists who are very much making their ways out of these pigeonholes. So especially, and this is a thing, I don't know if I'm going to do one day on Missy and one day on Lauryn Hill. one day of both, maybe a half day on Missy. Like this is, you're just going to have to keep watching this channel where I try to figure it out, because 45 classes is not enough. And eventually I'm going to be creating a class on female rappers and questions of sexuality. I'm going to be working with the Women and Gender Studies department. That's probably a couple of years down the line. I love this plan, but as of now, I only have like 4 students enrolled in class. I might have to actually cancel the class if I don't get enough students. If only YouTube viewers could enroll in my classes, my life would be a lot better. So I'm not exactly sure how much time I'm going to dedicate to both, but I really love this dichotomy that all 4 of these women are empowering, represent different aspects of femininity and female power, have different relationships to being marginalized. And it's just wonderful. I think it really sets up quite well for the musicians that they know better, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, and Megan Thee Stallion, who I'm probably going to be presenting basically all together. That might just be one day where I sort of go over everything. I'm very excited to teach them WAP as a song. I'm very excited to teach that, to give that song the academic seriousness that it deserves and needs as a revolutionary song, as the fight the power of the 2020s. Okay. It is. It needs the respect that it's not getting. So I'm happy to be teaching about that. As always, I'll show you some of the questions that I came up with to accompany this. So you can't just ask. The least realistic thing about Harry Potter is the teachers. At the end of in the first Harry Potter movie, at the end of one class, a teacher, the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, I think, just says, write a scroll about vampires for homework. And all the students are like, oh, I don't want to do that. You can't just tell people to read stuff. You can't just tell people to think about things or to write about them. You need to scaffold. You need to have learning outcomes. You need to have assessment. You need to have rubrics. Rubric. That's what you need to have. So you can't just ask students to read. You have to give them questions. A little secret, I don't actually care how well they answer all these questions. Some of these questions are just like, scan through and find them. The ones that matter to me are the paragraphs, but I don't even really care that much how well the students answer them in the homework. I want them to have the questions in their head. And then when I'm in class, I will be answering all these questions, not directly. I'm not going to go through the sheet directly, but as an example, if I talk about the Roxanne Wars, where here I ask them question number 4 in a brief paragraph, what does the author mean? Once Shantae hit the radio, things changed. I'm going to be talking about that. I would expect them by the end of reading and coming to class and listening and taking notes, they should be able to answer that with no problem. Okay, great. Interesting thing here, Sparky D, which she doesn't make a big reference to here. Sparky D in Sparky's attack song on Roxanne Shantae talks about the fact that she's light-skinned, which colorism is another thing which I might end up talking about in this class as it affects female rappers a lot in a similar way that the question of hair does. And again, this is to elucidate something that non-Black people might not know and might help African Americans to feel like their concerns in life are seen, because these things just go by and people don't notice them. A little bit on MC Lyte, just to explain the beef. Queen Latifah, again, just sort of questions here, making sure they're reading, making sure they're following along. I like how they quote Ken Tucker from Entertainment Weekly is calling TLC a perfect pop group. This book really helps to challenge my conception of them as a hip hop group and not just a pop group. And the video for Afro Puffs is important as well, which I'll have to talk about. There's some stuff, there's some questions about Lil Kim and Foxy Brown. Now, what I really like as a teacher is whenever any of these books specifically comments on a specific song, because then because I'm going to be doing 2 to 3 songs a class. Songs are maybe not the whole song, but I'm going to be showing the lyrics, talking about the importance of the lyrics, making sure they know how to comment on them, making sure they can annotate them in the greater social context that I'm explaining to them. So that is great. Big Mama thing with its discussion, its frank discussion of sex and raunch. I will be able to just sort of use the fact that she talks that Iandoli Sorry, it's a hard name to parse because I read the I as like an L, you know. Is it Landoli? Iandoli? Iandoli. Iandoli's book does really well, is talk about the development of sexuality, and she picks out this song so the students will be ready to hear the song in class. Here's just the kind of questions I like to ask the most. In a short paragraph, how would you describe the movement of Missy Elliott? So I'm trying to get the students to actually, this is a tough question. It's those paragraph questions that are the toughest because they're going to have to actually read and figure out what the answers are. I'm also going to be assigning the FD signifier video on Lauryn Hill. It's a great video, and it explains why she stopped making music and how she is perceived of. And even though FD signifier is a male talking about a woman, I think he does it in a very excellent intersectional way where he's able to really outline the ways that society, and more importantly, perhaps for his argument, the way Black male society has caused this estrangement from popular culture. So that's all quite interesting. Maybe later I'll do a video about the YouTube videos I'm going to be using. Then the Nicki, Cardi, and Megan sort of talking about these changes and whether or not, and this is going to be nice because this is going to really open up the question at the end to like have things changed. I'm also potentially, and this is again, I'm still trying to think about it, because students can't just sit there taking notes. They have to participate, they have to do stuff. So I'm thinking about using this book by Trisha Rose, the same author who wrote this book. Okay, so I'm thinking about taking this book and assigning different people to have debates in class. So I think what I'm going to do, because this is all about different crises that hip hop has, like what happened, as it says, what we talk about when we talk about hip hop and why it matters. So there's an entire section here on hip hop demeaning women. That's just the question. Hip hop demeans women. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign certain groups different sides of this debate, and I'm going to have them read this, read these sections and sort of discuss. Hip hop is not responsible for sexism. That's a whole section, right? There are B words and H words. Okay, that's a whole section. So it's a ridiculously well thought out and provocative section, which, sorry, my baby daughter is asleep, and that is my wife telling me not to wake her up. I will not pound on the ceiling. So I think that's going to be interesting. So I might, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking, well, 3 classes isn't going to be enough. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the early days and 80s. Then I'm going to do the 90s. Then I'm going to do the nowses. And then I think I'll do a class of debate where we discuss everything that we've been talking about with the representation of women in hip hop. Kind of really all have that as a discussion at the end where we're talking about it. I think that's how I'm going to do it. And I think as we go along, we'll see how I'm going to try to do a better job than books like this do, or books like Hip Hop America, of continuing the marginalization of the marginalized voices. So, oh yes, and also, what was the other thing? Hip Hop DX has a pretty good video, which I'm going to be referencing as well. The M is for misogyny. I think I'm just going to sort of like assign these videos as, like, I think some videos I might do as extra credit to sort of help students who maybe aren't doing great in the class to get a sort of an easy primer. Merz's writing or Merz's video on Hip Hop DX about misogyny and hip hop is very succinct and well done. I'm also thinking about having an entire video, well, have them watch that video by T Noir on hypersexualization and the perfect P word. It's a great video. I'm a little bit skeptical because she has a huge like sponsorship there for a sex toy company, which I don't have a problem with. personally, but I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble for like assigning them sponsored content. I haven't even really thought about that. I guess I don't think about that when it's, NordVPN or that ridiculous horse hockey about becoming a lord. How many like communist YouTubers are going to advertise to me about the greatness of the feudal system? Who's taking these checks, man? Lord. I'll make you a lord of my backyard. Okay. If you like this video, you own 1/1 billionth. And you can call yourself Lord of Skyland. Okay. That's my gift to you. That's my gift. You can do that. You don't need to send me any money. Just like my video. And you own 1/100000th of my land. Anyways, so I don't know if that's going to work. But it is a good video. And no, it's a great video. And I think I have to assign it. So I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to figure out how to deal with sponsored videos and how to work them together. All right. So there you go. There's my video on my problems with integrating female rappers into this syllabus. Trying to treat it seriously, trying not to continue the marginalization while also dealing with the marginalization that already exists. Because we can't pretend like it hasn't always been there. But maybe it won't always be. Okay. What do you think? Like this video? Do you have more thoughts? Oh, by the way, y'all are great. Leave comments, send messages to my business email, professorskybusiness@gmail.com. If you have ideas for how I can teach this better, this class, my doctorate is in 17th century French literature and philosophy, okay? We're talking Descartes, talking Moliere. I love hip hop. I study hip hop. I talk about hip hop. I listen to hip hop, but I'm not actually an academic expert. So if you have some things, if you say, Sky, how could you have not known about this article or this essay or whatever it is, or then make sure, just tell me, okay? I'm Mr. Authority Man with my glasses and my sweaters and in front of a big old map. But I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. Help me be that guy. Okay. Stop talking. That's the camera.